Good evening. I'm Nick Rishwain, and I'm here with Ivan Rakelin and
Right here.
Tunji Williams, and we are talking with DealWIP. That's dealwhip.co. We're talking again for the second time because we had a little technical error, and we're bummed about that because Tunji did a fantastic job last week when we had this conversation, but we get to know him a little bit more. We get to fire a few different comments and questions at him, and we get to learn a little bit more about DealWIP. DealWIP is due diligence for the 21st century. This is right from their website, and then Tunji's going to go into it and tell us a little bit more. Unlike your traditional virtual data rooms, and again, for those of you who aren't big law like myself and Ivan, some of this may not sound familiar to you, but this is a big deal in big law. Unlike your traditional virtual data rooms, DealWIP's due diligence platform revolves around the Q&A process. Collaborate with clients, delegate tasks to other deal team members, and instantly create robust diligence progress reports. Tunji, thank you for coming back. Again, pleasure to have you return so quickly. We certainly wanted you to return in maybe like 6 months. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for doing this with us again. Please tell us about yourself and a little bit about DealWIP.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here with you. Thanks, Nick and Ivan, for having me back. Feels like I was here just a week ago.
It seems like 2 hours ago we were talking. Zoom, I hate you.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of the show. You've had a few of my favorites on before, like Catherine Crowe from Digital Legal, Richard Tromans from Artificial Lawyers. So it's really nice to be on here. Glad to share you a little bit about the company. I guess I'll share, Nick, you've done a good job of giving the overview of what it is we do. But when I describe the product and the company, I really like to start from the problem that we're trying to solve. And the problem's really real to me and my co-founders because it's one we all experience practicing law ourselves. I started out of law school as a corporate and M&A associate at a large law firm. Mm-hmm. And it was my job to run, the blocking and tackling on large transactions. We represented large corporations doing big deals. And for me, it was a little bit disappointing. I'm sure I'm not alone in this, beginning practicing, realizing that, oh, wow, my actual day-to-day job is not what I read about in the Wall Street Journal. In a lot of ways, what I'm doing on a daily basis is, high-level, sophisticated secretarial work. And the labor and the intensity really comes in the context of making sure that you're running processes really efficiently.
Right.
So I learned very quickly that the job was less about negotiating deals as a first or second year associate and more about being very diligent and attentive in running process. So in the early years of practice, I was not in charge, but I was tasked with helping out with the due diligence process.
Okay.
So for those of you lucky enough not to be intimately familiar with what due diligence is, essentially whenever a deal happens, whenever two parties get together and decide they're going to engage in a transaction, there's a process that occurs on the front end of this entire dance, and it's called due diligence. And due diligence is essentially the exchange of information between buyer and seller. And the purpose of the process is for buyer to confirm that what they're getting from seller is in fact what they bargained for, right?
And this is generally at your level, at the big law level, mergers and acquisitions, correct? Yeah, okay.
It'll generally be in the context of a merger or an acquisition, the sale of some asset or the sale of securities in the company.
Okay.
And again, the purpose is for the buyer to confirm that they are in fact purchasing what's been presented on the bill of lading, right?
Okay.
So as a buyer, I come to seller and say, I'm going to ask you to confirm that the company or the asset that you're selling is in fact what it is. So that process is run via a due diligence Q&A, question and answer process. And the way that's managed currently is buyer's counsel and seller's counsel will work with their clients respectively and come up with questions and responses to those questions, right? So as an M&A associate at a large law firm representing buyer or seller, your job is to help coordinate that process. And the way it's managed currently is in email and Excel spreadsheets. So we imagine a large corporation presenting, a list of 100 questions to another corporation. That corporation then coordinating with their law firm and their internal specialists to come up with answers to those questions and present those questions back to buyer. And then buyer coordinating with their counsel and their internal specialists to come up with additional follow-up questions. And that entire process going back and forth, the flow of information back and forth happening in emails and attached Excel spreadsheets. That's the process that as a junior M&A associate, a large corporate law firm, you're tasked with managing. And what that entails is beyond just, constructing those emails and attaching the spreadsheets, is making sure that the parties responsible for asking and responding to those various questions have what they need in front of them to be an effective part of that process. And
it feels like an incredibly slow, incredibly laborious process, the way you just described it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be. And the interesting thing about it is the process is incredibly slow and laborious, almost irrespective of the size of the deal. It's interesting that sometimes the smaller the deal, the more questions there are being posed. So it's a problem and an inefficient process, I think, that spans law firms of all sizes, deals of all sizes. And it's something I frankly had trouble with early on in my career. And I think part of the reason I struggled with it is because I thought, I know this is important work, but when I think about the value I'm adding as a junior associate in this process, I'm not sure that I'm actually doing work that a highly sophisticated or diligent high school senior couldn't do.
Right.
Right. So that starts to give you a little bit of anxiety, not only because the work is high stakes and you've got to be diligent, but also because you're thinking, okay, I'm getting paid a six-figure amount to do this work. But if I'm honest with myself, the value I'm actually adding on this process in terms of real concrete value may be low five figures. And you think about the delta between what you truly think you're adding to the process and what you're being paid, and you multiply that by the number of junior associates across the world doing the same job as you quickly realize there's an opportunity here to perhaps be on the right side of a trend that's coming. And the trend I spotted is there's going to be serious automation and streamlining of some of these processes.
Right.
It may change my job drastically or make it unnecessary. So I want to be on the solution side of that problem.
And part of your experience there, Tunji, would you say, for our listeners and viewers, I have the benefit of having talked with Tunji last week about this, but did you feel like there was something unjustifiable in what you were billing the client as well for the work that you were doing?
I think there's certainly an element of that. I'll preface my response by saying law firms do incredibly valuable work.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary for companies negotiating transactions to have able counsel by their side, guiding them and shepherding them through deals. But it's equally as important for those companies to have their lawyers working on substantive legal work, right? And that's the distinction we always try to make when we describe the value in our product. There's legal work involved in deals, and there's non-legal work. And
more administrative work.
Precisely. And as a company, we're looking to create tools that allow lawyers to spend more time doing great legal work and less time doing non-legal administrative work. Because the more time lawyers spend doing non-legal administrative work, the more they have to charge their clients, right? And the more they have to charge their client, the more expensive legal services are on a whole.
Right.
That's our job, and that's our mission at DealWIP, is initially with this due diligence collaboration platform is to help eliminate non-legal administrative work in the due diligence process with a standardizable, repeatable process that's embedded in our software.
Right.
That's what we're all about.
I think that's fantastic because you've hit on it. Like this, relieve those associates who are doing this kind of work and allow them to work on some substantive legal work or more creative as those in the artificial intelligence space. And we'll get to your one of your co-founder's comments that I love, but take away the routine tasks and allow the employee, or in this case, the lawyer, to work on the more creative tasks that actually takes them. Get rid of the routine, work on the creative. And that sounds like what you guys are doing.
That's exactly right. And not just the creative and substantive work, but the high value, high impact work that we all went to law school to do. And one thing I like to say is, I think in practice, when you don't have really solid, repeatable processes, the weakest link in any given engagement will always win. Right? One of the purposes behind great software, especially in the workplace, is you should create a floor. Great software helps create a floor for any given process, whether that process is creating documents, or that process is executing a due diligence exercise. Great software helps standardize the quality of output, right? And that's one of the driving focuses of our tool, is that if we can create a process, right, to which every organization, every transaction in the world can adhere for due diligence, we can help create a bottom, right, a floor in terms of quality process and quality output across the world for this process. And if we can do that in due diligence, we can do that in the collaboration and negotiation of material documents. We can then go on to do that in the closing and signing of those material documents. And then we can go on to apply that same process and schema to post-closing management of documents, right? So we're mastering due diligence, mastering standardizing, and helping to create a repeatable process for a very important element of the deal, and hopefully transitioning across the entire deal until you have an end-to-end transaction management platform. Because our goal is to create a platform on which all transactions in the world occur, right? And you do that by creating a wedge initially with one element of transaction. For us, that's due diligence.
That's the due diligence. Ivan, would you want to pipe in with something here? Because let me mute my side while you comment, because I think we're getting a little feedback. So
yeah, absolutely. So Tunji, it's great that you're back on. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that video from last week, but we're going to recreate it and make it even better.
All right.
So check this out. My question to you is going to be, if you can go into a little bit more detail on what sort of tools you had when you were working at a law firm, and then how you transitioned over into coming up with this company, and essentially where you're at today, and then moving on to what your plan is moving forward over the next 6 to 12 months. So the history through essentially the 1 year plan.
Absolutely. I guess for me, I always like to tell the story of the company through my own lens, the lens of my experience. And my path to this point has been really circuitous. I didn't wake up in law school and realize I wanted to start a legal tech company. I got here, I think, as a result of lessons learned and failures and awakenings as I learned more about the practice of law. And I began to reckon with what do I really want out of this journey, this career. And the more I realized that the path I was on didn't really match up with my ideals for what the practice of law should look like and what service delivery and legal should look like, the more I was determined to set out and forge a path for my own and create a company that reflected what I thought the future ought to look like in legal service delivery. It was tough for me to forge out and do this because I come from a family of 3 generations of lawyers and barristers, and all I ever wanted to do was be an attorney. All I ever wanted to do was counsel companies on the biggest deals in the world, the ones I would see on the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. So it was tough for me to decide, you know what, I think there's another way to do this. But
it's a pretty low bar to set for yourself, but keep going.
So for me, it harkens back to the story I was telling initially about just having anxiety about not adding enough value as a first or second year associate. I didn't show this last time, but I left my job. So I started out at a large law firm. I was about 7 months in, and I thought, you know what, this isn't for me. I know that tech is going to, irreversibly change this industry, and I want to learn what it means to be on the inside of a technology company with promise. So I left my firm job and I went to go join a company called Fiscal Note. And Fiscal Note's a company that was at that point about 30 employees. I was the 31st. And what they were doing was really interesting. Number one, they were led by 23-year-olds. Five 23-year-olds started this company. I knew them tangentially from my experience in politics in Maryland. Some of them were involved in politics. But what they were doing that was really cool was they were applying predictive analytics to legislation at the state and federal level. The magic trick was they could tell you with 97% accuracy with their algorithm the likelihood of any given piece of legislation passing. Not only that, they could tell you who was likely to vote for the legislation in order of likelihood, both at the committee and the general floor level. And I said, that is really interesting because what these people do, if they're successful, is they're democratizing government access. They're democratizing lobbying. And lobbying is a lot like legal services because it's stodgy. It's a game built on access, right? And tradition. And what they're doing is they're applying data and technology to help unlock that for the general populace. And I thought that's really powerful. I want to understand how you sell that type of tool to a very old guard industry. So I joined that company and I joined the business development team. My job was to go out across the country and sell their original platform to law firms, the same folks we're selling to now. So I learned very quickly what resistance and shutdown. But it's interesting. Fiscal Note recently just bought Roll Call for $180 million. This is 4 years after they started. They're a company worth, if not already worth $1 billion, worth very close to it. And this is all from 5 guys who set out with this massive vision for what you could do for an old industry. So I worked there for a few months. It wasn't enough for me to pay back my law school loans on a monthly basis. I was forced back in.
Yeah, we all know that.
We all know that story.
But for me, it planted a seed in my mind, and I knew, look, it's possible to make this kind of technology, and you've got to dream big about what it can do for an industry. So I go back into practicing law, and I'm looking for problems. I'm looking for an opening into some type of problem that will lead to a solution that can help transform legal services as we think of it, right? So that problem didn't come about for another 2 years. I kept practicing, and then really got frustrated with this. So that's how we get there to work to where we are now. The 1 year goal for us at this point, Ivan, is to really continue to refine the product we got. When I talk to folks in the legal tech industry, I'm always amused, impressed is probably a better term. I'm always impressed by the incredible tools that come out on a monthly basis. People are creating really incredible things in this ecosystem, and it's inspiring to see. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that the challenge for us as an industry, the industry being legal tech, is not to create really cool things. It's to create really useful things that people actually adopt. Right. Because once you're able to access the people who actually work in your industry, and you're able to provide them with tools that they want to use on a daily basis, you then have a channel to distribute tools that are innovative over a long period of time. So in a year from now, I want to be a year closer to creating tools that people can't work without. And I think from there, the doors open up, and the things we can do as a company are, unlimited.
And Tunji, one of the things that thanks, Ivan, for muting yourself there. One of the things that I think we discussed last time is it's not just technology. All sorts of technology is built and then never used, and some of it really revolutionary.
Yep.
And I think we discussed that the product that you've created here for the due diligence Q&A should work into the attorney's workflow. Because if it's not working into their workflow, somebody who's working on the billable hour is not probably going to take the time to learn it unless it decreases the difficulty of their job and increases the efficiency. And it sounds like what DealWIP has done here is created, and I think we talked about, in my mind, I view it as an Evernote Slack kind of combination. In that an attorney, it's cloud-based and works right into their workflow. Is that accurate? And tell us a little bit more about the product itself and how an attorney uses it.
Absolutely. I'm eager to get into the meat of what the product actually does. And I think that's a pretty apt description of what we're trying to do. I like to describe us as a Slack for due diligence. And I say Slack because Slack is really revolutionary in the sense that they created a tool that is supplanting email at 21st century companies. And they did that not by focusing upon creating a revolutionary or innovative feature-laden cloud-based app. What they did was they thought about a problem that affects corporations and groups everywhere, right? And they landed upon that problem because the problem was their own. I mean, Slack was born from a gaming company. They created something to help them communicate in their own offices, right? I think the most powerful products and powerful companies are built from entrepreneurs looking to solve their own problem and then looking up and realizing, my goodness, I'm not the only one positioned this way. I could solve a problem that everybody has. And I think we're fortunate to be in a similar position. The problem we're solving is, again, a really messy, unnecessarily inefficient due diligence process, right? Due diligence across deals of all sizes, across law firms of all sizes, and due diligence done on behalf of companies of all sizes. That's a problem that's not going away because that process is an embedded and entrenched part of any given transaction, right? So number one, we've got an important problem that's universal. Number two, because we were at the bottom of the totem pole at the organization responsible for shepherding this process, I understand how the sausage is made. My co-founders, Alex, James, Juan, they understand how the sausage is made and they intimately understand the problem, right? So we're able to think very globally and very laterally about the solution because we were under the problem for a very long time when you combine our years of practice, right? And then from there, because we understand the people we're looking to serve, the people that we're looking to serve with the product, we understand where they are and we understand what it takes to meet them where they are. Because if you create technology that doesn't meet your consumer, your end user where they are, you're never going to inspire adoption. And you may create a tool that people think they have to use, but they'll never want to use it, right? And that's the magic thing. You've got to create something that people love and want to use, right? I don't know about you guys, but we use Slack at DealWIP, and the afternoons when the Slack server fails, we dread going back to communicating with email. It's always burdensome and painful for us. It's only been around since 2014, and we can't imagine a life before it. So that's what drives us at DealWIP, is to create a tool that's at the center of people's lives that way. So to go back to the Slack parallel, the problem that Slack solved was that email presents a very disjointed mode of communication, right? You send a bunch of different emails about the same topic. And it's difficult to reference something you previously communicated without forwarding an old email. And to do that, you've got to find the old email. And you might have 9 or 10 different emails you want to reference in one email. You can't reference them all in the same email. Problem, right? So what Slack did was they created these project and subject-based chat rooms that allowed people to talk about any given project or subject endlessly, create a conversation history, a thread history, that would allow you to see the entire context for any given conversation or project on which you were working at an organizational level or across organizations, right? So it wasn't about creating a really cool chat room, it was about solving that fundamental business problem, disjointed communication across formats. How do you centralize communication across formats for various processes? And we're taking the same approach to due diligence. Due diligence now is managed in email and with Excel spreadsheets, right? And with our tool, we're looking to solve 3 core problems, right? The first, as I mentioned earlier, is we're trying to help attorneys and the users of our product, which I think in the future will be much more than attorneys. I think it's any service provider around a transaction. That could be accountants, consultants, investment bankers, you have it. Anybody that's serving in a transaction. It's to help reduce the amount of non-substantive administrative work being performed. And we do that by automating and standardizing some of that administrative work and embedding it in the feature set in our applications. So that's the number one thing, reduce administrative non-substantive work. The second thing is bring transparency to complicated processes. Because I think part of what brings anxiety for service providers is when you have to do 2 things in servicing your client. You've got to do the nitty-gritty, the tough work that you promised you're going to do, but you've also got to communicate with the client about what it is you're doing. right? And the communication about what you're doing really isn't your job. You went to school, you had this experience so you can do a good job. Your job is not to communicate what you're doing as you're doing it necessarily. It's become part of the job, but it need not be with the technology we have available to us. So what we want to do is create tools that make processes transparent so you don't have to communicate as a service provider. It's just openly obvious what you're doing because your client can see it as you do it. They're always updated on your progress, right? So you save time, you save stress. And the third thing is reduce the risk of human error in processes. You do that by standardizing processes. I think any successful person will tell you that the way to achieve large grand goals is to break them down into small, achievable tasks, daily tasks, right, one foot in front of the other. And the same is true for large transactions. Billion-dollar transactions happen because people come together and put one task next to another until the deal is done. So we believe that any transaction of any size can really be broken down into its component parts. And whenever you can break a larger thing down into its component parts, you can create repeatable, standardizable processes around those parts such that in any given scenario, you have rails on your process, right? So people don't fall out and the quality of the output is predictable and consistent. So those are the three things we're doing: reducing the amount of non-substantive administrative work, increasing transparency around the due diligence process, and 3 is reducing the risk of human error by putting rails on the due diligence process. And I think at a feature level, what we've done to help you achieve that is we've centralized the Q&A process. Due diligence is all about Q&A at the end of the day. I think people are used to thinking about due diligence as a document dump, right?
That's how I would have viewed it. That was my experience until I watched your previous the demo you guys did, I think, at Blank in Rome, yeah. And said that the Q&A process is about 70% of the due diligence process, or it can be up to 70%, which is a significant amount of billable hours and a significant amount of work. That's so right. I would have thought of it as, here's our document, similar to Discovery is basically how I would have thought of it. Here's all the documents.
That's right. And I think as technologists or anybody trying to innovate in any area, you're tasked with a huge responsibility. You don't want to just create things that are cool that you can sell. You've got to think about pushing whatever industry on which you're focused or care about to the next level, right? If you can't do that, then it's not worth doing it. We're not in this to create a cool app that we can sell in a couple of years. We're in this because we want to elevate the standard of legal service delivery. We think we can do that with a very simple, very beautiful application. And for us, like, we think about VDRs, virtual data rooms. Virtual data rooms, until DealWIP, virtual data rooms were the central workspace for due diligence. And you ask yourself, what is a virtual data room? Yes. A virtual data room is a replacement, right? A cloud-based replacement for a physical data. So back in the old days, buyer would send a whole bunch of questions to seller, and seller would then populate a physical room full of documents indexed and responsive to buyer's questions. And then they would send buyer a sheet of paper that would direct them to the correct box where they could find the documents they were looking for. VDRs came along, large companies like Merrill and Intralinks came along and said, hey, we can solve your storage problem, and we'll give you a place in the cloud, a special place called the cloud, to store those physical documents. So you no longer have to worry about storing physical documents in the room. We'll give you unlimited space in the cloud if you pay this special price. And law firm said, and bankers said, wow, this is great. We don't have to worry about real estate because we can put all our documents in the cloud. Mm-hmm. But what wasn't happening is there was no fundamental reimagination of the process. The process was managed that way because technology was not available to help rethink the order in which we did things. If you return to first principles, due diligence is about a question and answer process. And question and answer, whether in the physical world or in the cloud world, is all about a flow of information, right? Flow of information from one party to another party, then to another party, and back to the original party over and over again until everybody is satisfied. If that's the case, why center your technology or your technological innovation around cloud storage? Instead, it should be a process innovation. So we've realized, because we had the benefit, unlike VDRs, of being able to put on our underwear before our clothes, we realized Q&A is about this flow of information. So we built a tool that centralizes the Q&A module, the Q&A process, and allows multiple organizations and stakeholders to ask one another questions, exchange information in the form of substantive responses and documents, while at the same time disclosing those documents as they would in a VDR, but contextualizing that full exchange and that flow of information in a neat, aesthetically appealing, and simple format, right? So that's what DealWIP is. We then allow organizations to manage the due diligence process by delegating responsibilities within their organization and keeping track of the entire process on the platform as well. So at a feature level, that's what we offer.
Nice. So I think because I'm on mobile right now, Nick, are you able to do a quick demo? And while you're bringing up the demo, or at least the website that kind of shows in a picture what we're discussing here, when are you going to be ready to deploy this thing, Tunji? What's the pricing model, and when are you expecting to deploy this?
So the pricing model is subscription pricing.
Nice, always good.
And I think that's great for us on a business level because it's predictable income. But I think it's even better for the end user because unlike a VDR that offers value on a transaction by transaction basis, we intend for DealWIP to be a true system of engagement. It's a tool that travels with the end user across deals. It's part of their practice. It's not just for one transaction. It's a tool that you use on all your transactions. You wake up to it, you go to bed with it, system of engagement. So I think any good system of engagement, because it travels with you, it's something you use on a daily, monthly basis. So we think that's an appropriate pricing scheme. We also offer per transaction pricing for law firms looking to more easily pass the cost through to their clients. So that's something, that's a reality we just have to recognize. So we offer that hybrid pricing system. I think you asked another question.
Excellent.
You answered that piece as far as the demo.
Yeah, so Tunji, I went ahead and gave you host privileges here. I think you should be able to share your screen. If down at the bottom, you should be able to click share screen. Maybe you could give us a little run through like you did the other night, just so people could see how clean the video or the interaction interface. Thank you. See how good the interface is.
I shared with you guys last time. We're at the stage where I'm still doing sales demos every single day, back to back to back to back. So it's great because for about a year, we've been around for 14 months now, and for about a year of our existence, I had nothing but slideware prototypes to show people. So it's a thrill to actually get to show people the real thing, and it's fun to get to sell something you dreamed up on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think this is, this was the thing that really killed Ivan and I about you showed us this, and your excitement for your product really comes through. So I'm glad we're getting to see this one more time.
And as I'm opening this up, I'd like to give a quick shout out to my co-founders, Alex Nordum, James Clark and Breslin, and Juan Rodriguez. Without those guys, there would be no DealWIP today. And we've got a great team both here in Brooklyn and in Nashville. Brian Pafford, Tim Connor, Rachel Self, and Rama Khan helping us build out this product and build out the vision we have for this company. So we're absolutely indebted to them, and it's a joy to work with them every day.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Let me show you what we got. So this is what you see when you log into DealWIP. And I'm going to give you a quick overview demo. I'll spare you all the details. I'm happy to give demos to anybody that reaches out to us. Again, the design principle behind our entire application is we want it to be simple, we want it to be intuitive, and we want it to be enticing. We want it to feel and look like candy. We want to hide the complexity of your work behind a beautiful user interface and user experience. So that's what we're aiming for, and that's what you see, hopefully. So what you're seeing here is the matter board. The matter board is essentially a running list of all your ongoing matters. This one is particularly long because I use it for my demos. I hope nobody's working this hard in real life. You can search through these matters by typing in the matter you're looking for here. You can sort them in alphabetical order as they're sorted now, or by when they were created or last updated. Your choice.
What's that bird one right there?
What's that?
What's that bird one?
Bird? This is just one of the matters, like a demo matter.
It's not that company Bird that just came out, is it? With the bikes?
Oh, I wish. If anybody from Bird is listening, please reach out. DealWIP is a great due diligence tool for your next acquisition. No, I think it's just randomly named. What I'll show you next, just to put the whole thing in context, is I mentioned earlier that the whole due diligence Q&A process is about a due diligence request list. And that essentially is a list that buyer will submit to seller, and it's a bunch of questions asking about the company that seller is trying to sell, right? So what we allow you to do on the DealWIP platform is to either create that request list from scratch, right? You can enter in the name of your list and enter in as many requests or questions as you'd like. That's going to be unusual for most folks, unless you just got a few questions and you want to start them from scratch. Most people will choose to import a template request list they have saved, right? This is one their firm will use generally for this type of transaction. So we allow you to select that file from your document management system or from your desktop. And we automatically transform that document so that it shows up in our format, in our digital format on DealWIP. So I'll show you how that works. You guys now will live on our Matterboard. So what you're going to see now is I just uploaded an Excel sheet that had a whole bunch of questions on it, organized by category. And those questions have now been transposed from the Excel sheet onto the due diligence platform. And what you're seeing here is all the questions from that Excel sheet. And what you see right above the questions is the category to which they belong, right? So these are all the health and safety questions. You see the environmental questions here. And what I can do is save this list. And now it lives in my due diligence request list template library, right here in my DealWIP library. So anytime I want to use this particular set of questions for any given deal, I just come in here, select the request list, and start the due diligence process, right? So I'll return to the Matterboard. Creating a new matter happens here, right? So if I have this due diligence request list and I know the party to which I'd like to send it, I come in here, create the matter by adding an organization. I add my organization, add the team members from my organization I'd like to be part of this process. I add any other organization I'd like, and I add the recipient organization, the organization going to receive these questions. We've made it flexible such that you can add as many organizations as you'd like around this due diligence process. And each organization has an administrator, and that administrator is able to add as many users from that given organization as they'd like. So you create a multi-party, multi-stakeholder process in a really simple fashion. Feel free to interject at any point. You got questions, or
there was an item that you brought up, and maybe we're not there yet, but there was what you were talking about was the transparency of the entire project, and how answering all those client questions and where are we at and things like that. And your team had found a way around that by allowing all the members involved in the Q&A to see everything that was going on here, and some could have access to a particular matter, others maybe not, maybe only the legal team members, maybe somebody from the corporation, and you had a percentage of how far we were in a particular. I think that was really important to show. Because
let me jump to that then. I think you're right. And for us, that just like Fiscal Note had their magic trick with predicting the legislation, I think for us that's our magic trick, is the project management element of this whole application.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I cut you off there, but that popped in my mind based on your comments on transparency earlier, and I thought, this is a real kind of standout option that you got, or not option, but feature that you offer here.
Absolutely, and I'll jump to it in 1 second after I just quickly explain the problem with due diligence. I know I've said it a couple of times, but one of the big problems with due diligence is that clients and attorneys find that due diligence can be never-ending if you allow it to be. And the problem to be solved there is it's nice to give any process a beginning and end, and then a roadmap in between those two terminal points. And that's what we aim to do with our application, is diligence should have a beginning, which is the submission of the initial questions, and the end, right, which is an agreement between the two parties, or however many parties are involved, that all those questions have been answered satisfactorily, right? So that's what we aim to help people do with this application. And I'll show you how we do that. Before I jump there, just to give that context, what you're seeing here is that due diligence list we uploaded and turned from an Excel sheet into a DealWIP due diligence request list. You're seeing that here organized by category on the left, and within each category are the individual request list questions, right? So we're in the corporate category, and here you're seeing.
Real quick, let me ask you a question while you're on that.
Yep.
Do you have a question in that list there based on the jurisdiction of the deal, of the acquirer versus the what either side of the transaction? You have to determine what jurisdiction you're in, and then based on that, you're going to have a line of questioning based on the laws of mergers and acquisitions in that state. Correct?
Ivan, I'm sorry, you cut up just a little bit. I know your question's about jurisdiction in the line of questioning.
One of the questions asks, right, what jurisdiction is the acquirer, and then the acquiree. I'm not sure what the terminology is in this instance, but
yeah,
you ask that question, and that would potentially trigger another branch, if you will, of questions based on the requirements for a merger in that jurisdiction. Correct?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, the way we have this organized, so I think what you're referring to is back here in the create a matter section, right? So when you're creating a matter, or maybe not here, you might have seen a question asking about jurisdiction. And the way we have the application organized, we give users complete flexibility with respect to what questions they answer. We don't have any preset templates. So users and organizations can ask any questions they see fit. We don't present at this point. We don't
okay.
based on jurisdiction or any other information input by users. Not yet.
Okay.
So it's entirely configurable by the user. All the questions you see have been entered by the users on this transaction.
All right.
So let me jump. So I've explained quickly what's going on here. These are the questions. Below these questions, you are seeing responses to those questions submitted by the other party, right? And you can, and when you respond to a question, you can not only submit a written response, but you can attach the responsive document in line with that submitted response, right? So that now becomes part of the thread history, similar to what happens on Slack. You can decide to whom this is viewable, right? Just your organization or the entire deal. And then you can submit that answer. And that now becomes part of the record. There's my response. There's the document I submitted in response.
And I love that you've got a date and time stamped right there as soon as it's submitted.
Exactly. And then all those documents now live right here. This is the list of documents submitted in response to this question. And now, Nick, let me jump to what you were referencing earlier. So this is how we help parties manage in a really transparent and simple way the Q&A process, right? We create a conversation around each question, and the documents now live here, but in context below the questions instead of in a virtual data room removed from the Q&A process. And what we offer here, the second value proposition on this tool, is the diligence reporting tool, right? Mm-hmm. This is important because it helps service providers, lawyers, for instance, respond to the question that's often asked by clients: where are we on the diligence process? Clients always want to have a snapshot of progress because that's how they figure out, number one, where are we? And number two, how much more are we going to have to pay for this process? And it was always very difficult for me to offer that snapshot progress update because it's hard to do without a tool like this. It's nearly impossible. And if you do it, it requires a whole lot of time to summarize the process. So we wanted to eliminate that problem. We wanted lawyers and service providers to be able to offer an answer to that question in a matter of seconds. And here's how we do that. Because the entire process is centered around the Q&A exchange, we're able to tell you where your entire team is on answering and attending to the questions for which they're responsible. So what you're seeing in the top right-hand side is a quick update on where the questions are. So you see my team is currently awaiting reply for 23% of the questions, has 21% of the questions to review, meaning they're sitting in our court and we have to review them. We're the bottleneck on those questions. And 56% have been completed, meaning answers have been provided that satisfy both parties. what I'm seeing here is a project manager view, right? So in this first column, I'm seeing all the members of my team at my law firm. These are members who have been assigned some questions or some set of questions for review. In the second column, I'm seeing the status of their review, right? What have they done, what's been completed, and what's still awaiting work from them.
So you know that Jose has completed one of his tasks. He's waiting to review one, and he's awaiting reply for two.
Precisely.
So you see somebody is slacking somewhere, you can ask them, what's the hold up, and how do we move this along? Like if somebody has 25 to review and only one completed, you have, as a project manager, the ability to say, all right, we need to see what's happening on this particular set of tasks.
That's exactly right. And I don't have to rely upon this person to tell me where they are, right? As the project manager, I know exactly where they are, and I can click into any given issue and understand why they are a bottleneck if they happen to be a bottleneck. So this is a power tool for a project manager or an M&A associate like I used to be, in charge of blocking and tackling and managing specialists during the Q&A process in an M&A transaction. So this is our magic trick, and we think this tool gets better over time because we hope to allow users to manage process at a more granular level as the application develops. And we also think in the due diligence Q&A portion of the tool, we eventually will be able to suggest to individuals questions they ought to ask based on the information we know about the transaction they're performing, right? I think that's when you get to next level value add, is when you're able to help guide the due diligence process by translating or by synthesizing information about what they're doing and suggesting what they ought to do to achieve the outcomes they want. I think that's when you create a really special tool that can help people do work much faster and more efficiently. So that's where we're hoping to go, and we're starting with this initial simple version.
This is fantastic. I have a couple of more questions, Ivan. I think we got about 5 to 10 minutes here. I hope you have another question as well for him. But I think I wanted to take it one item that we didn't touch on in our last discussion. And I didn't realize that you knew Catherine Crow from Digitory Legal, but I feel like there is some real synergy here between your products. Her identifying, and now as I recall, she was doing more specifically litigation spend or legal spend in litigation products. But I felt like when you mentioned her and you've gotten to know Catherine and she's really amazing, and so is Digitory Legal, her company. I'm seeing, if you guys could also provide some spending or some synergy there. Has there been any discussion of that type of feature for you, or any synergy between the two companies potentially? Anything like that? Or are you guys trying to stay away from any of the budgeting and focus on just solving this problem?
I think it's, well, first of all, Catherine's one of my favorite people in the legal tech ecosystem. I think she's a phenomenal entrepreneur, and she's got a really great product.
I have to agree with you and second that.
And she's extremely generous as well. She started a little bit ahead of us. The things she's learned building a company, she's been very willing to share with us, and we're eternally grateful. I think one of the most important things to remember building any type of product in any vertical is to stay in your lane, right? That means figure out exactly the problem you're trying to solve and remain laser focused on solving that problem. And don't venture out until you solve your initial problem, because what happens is you can become, your application can quickly become very convoluted and difficult to use.
Yep.
And we were, Nick, before we got started recording, we were talking about a particular software application that I think people know very well, that for our company, for DealWIP, has become a burden to use. We actually got rid of it because it became so feature-laden and so convoluted, it just was a pain to use. So I'm sure there's use in each of those features, but it took us so long to figure out where they were and how to use them that we decided it was a waste of our time and money to use the application. At DealWIP, we never want to get there. I think the genius is in simplicity, and simplicity comes from having laser focus and vision. And that vision comes from being, again, laser focused on solving one particular problem. And Catherine Crow and Digitory Legal are solving a very important problem, and we think we're solving one as well. I think in the future, legal tech companies, it behooves all of us to begin to think about how we can create not just a community of entrepreneurs and founders, but a community of technology. Because I think that's how you best solve the end user problems, is creating technology that speaks to one another effectively, the same way apps on your iPhone speak to one another and help you live life better. I think we can do the same for the legal services end user.
And that's all I think Ivan and I hope to see is and maybe act as somewhat of a catalyst to advocate for and encourage collaboration in the space, because there's really so much that can still be changed in whether you call it legal innovation or legal disruption, or legal evolution. I think a lot can be changed in this space.
Right. It comes down to passionate entrepreneurs. So Tunji, you're one of the most passionate entrepreneurs as far as we've heard on this podcast, really articulating what your product's about. And that's how we move forward, I think, is with people like you. It's good. It's good.
And supporting people like Tunji and people like, being helpful is where we can for each other. I think that's great that the way you said that Catherine had been, she had a little bit more time ahead of you, and been supportive. It's just it's nice to hear that about this community, especially when law firms have traditionally been siloed, so.
Hey, I got one last question. So we didn't mention this go around is, as part of your development of building this product out, you attended 2 different incubators. Can you just briefly touch on those for other people that are in the legal tech space? They may want to, apply to those, and if you can share your experience and how other people could jump on those opportunities as well.
Absolutely, I'm more than happy to. I should restate that I'm just a regular guy. A year and a half ago, I was a frustrated mid-level associate at a law firm, and I had no idea that I would be able to help create a legal technology company. And then finally decided, you know what? I'm frustrated with this problem, and there's nobody else solving it. I'm going to solve it for myself. And I don't think we could be here 14 months later without the help of these 2 programs. The first is the LexisNexis Legal Tech Accelerator out in Silicon Valley. It's a phenomenal tech accelerator program run by the folks at LexisNexis. They've done 3 programs so far. They began in the beginning of 2017. We were part of their second cohort. And with each cohort, they choose six to 7 promising legal tech companies and founders, and they invest 12 weeks in those companies, trying to help them understand, among other things, how to develop a product using agile methodology, how to sell to law firms, a notoriously difficult industry to sell into, how to market your product effectively. And these are things that it's really difficult to learn from a book. So to get the opportunity to learn it from executives at LexisNexis and be part of that community, really invaluable to us. So we continue to be grateful for that opportunity. We also had the special opportunity as a company to be part of what's called the MDR Labs program in London. And that program is run by a law firm called Mishcon de Re. Mishcon is a 500 attorney plus firm with their main offices in London. And they started a program called MDR Labs. And the idea behind that program, which is run by Nick West, the Chief Strategy Officer at Mishcon de Re, the idea behind that program is to help, again, invest in the legal tech ecosystem by bringing on board 6 to 7 promising companies with technology that the firm not only finds interesting, but that the firm is interested in leveraging as part of their own workflow, and allow those companies during a 10-week rigorous process to test their technology and refine it with real-life attorneys using it in real-life use cases. So we gained immeasurably from that opportunity, and we're able to refine and hone our product over those 10 weeks. And the product we have today, and the one we'll be taking to market in November, is largely a product of that experience. So those are 2 incredible programs, and I hope folks interested apply. And if anyone has questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions from anybody about those programs.
Fantastic question there, Ivan. I appreciate you reminding us about that. Ivan, did you have one last thing that you wanted to add in there?
No, I think that's it. I think we went over again.
Not quite.
But
let's do this last thing. Tunji, can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I'm always available, always willing to speak with folks and bounce ideas around. I love just chatting, if you can't tell from my verbose responses to all the questions. I can be reached at my email address, which is tunji@dealwip.co. So that's TUNJI@DEALWIP.co. I can be reached on Twitter at Tunji Williams. That's my full name, at Tunji Williams. And I can also be reached preferably through the DealWIP website, our landing page, which is DealWIP.co. And you can go there and learn a little bit more about our product and to sign up for a demo. And you'll be sure to get that demo within 12 hours. That's just how we work. So happy to chat with anybody.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Tunji. If you'll go ahead and end your screen share there, Tunji, I want to thank you again for your willingness to come back. We're really glad you did it.
Magnificent.
Did another great job, and we do want to see you come back. And certainly if anybody at Deloitte or Ernst & Young as well wants to reach out to you, I think from that side of the merger, this would also be, or that side of the acquisition, this would also be a very useful tool for, as you mentioned earlier, the accounting portion of the due diligence. So I encourage them to reach out to you at Tunji@dealwip.co or on Tunji Williams on Twitter. Thank you again, Tunji. And Ivan, I'm glad you were able to make it tonight. We hope to have this recording up for tomorrow. So hopefully that'll all work out. And Tunji, we look forward to having you come back in, say, 6 months or so. Tell us how you're knocking them dead out there.
Hopefully it's 6 months.
One at a time there. One at a time.
No, I said hopefully it'll be 6 months and not 6 days this time.
That's right. That's right. So our guest tonight was Tunji Williams. Tunji Williams of DealWIP.co. Thank you, Tunji. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tunji. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, gents.
We'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.